In Las Vegas, back in 2016, Bruno Mars made the biggest bet of his entire life. And no, it wasn't at some high-stakes poker table. It was a gamble on a business model, one that would completely reshape his career from just a hit-making machine into a full-blown financial empire. But let's kick things off with the wild rumor that got everyone talking in 2024. The idea that Bruno Mars was drowning in gambling debt. We're talking $50 million owed directly to MGM Resorts. So is it true? Well, the answer is way more complicated and honestly, way more brilliant than a simple yes or no. To really understand what's going on with this so-called debt, we've got to go back to the very beginning of his Las Vegas journey, because this was never just another residency. This was a totally new way of doing business between a superstar and a casino. And this right here, this shows you just how revolutionary his deal really was. See, the old Vegas model is simple. The artist gets a flat fee for every show. They're basically an employee. But Bruno completely flipped the script. He didn't want to be an employee. He wanted to be a partner. He negotiated for a piece of the action, a share of the revenue from the entire casino on the nights he performed. So you might be asking, how in the world did he pull that off? Why would a casino ever agree to that? Because his value wasn't just about selling tickets to a theater. His presence supercharged the entire property. He filled the high roller suites. He kept people gambling longer. He boosted sales at every bar and restaurant. He wasn't just a performer. He was the economic engine for the whole place. Now, of course, you don't get that kind of leverage without having the goods to back it up. And they're all started with an absolutely legendary, unstoppable run of hits. I mean, just look at this stretch from 2010 to 2018. The guy was everywhere. Hit after hit, blockbuster albums, not one but two Super Bowl halftime shows. He was on top of the world. But then, notice that last part. Around 2018, the whole cycle of making new music, it just kind of stops. And we're not talking about some indie artist taking a well-deserved break here. This is a guy who sold over 130 million records. He was at the absolute height of his powers. So that's the big question, right? Why would an artist at the very peak of their fame just hit the brakes? Well, the answer isn't about creative burnout. It was a strategic, calculated pivot from being a musician to being an asset manager. And this is where we see that huge shift in his thinking. The move from Bruno Mars the musician to Bruno Mars the brand. His sound itself became a powerful financial asset, something to be managed and optimized for maximum return. Now, to really get why he'd make this pivot, you have to understand the messy economics of music today. Let's take Uptown Funk. It has almost 5 billion streams on Spotify. That's a B. That's gotta be a monster payday, right? Well, not exactly. Yeah, take a look at this. This is the kind of math that breaks an artist's heart. Of all the money that comes in, the record label takes the lion's share. After the co-writers and producers get their cut, Bruno himself might only walk away with a tiny sliver. We're talking maybe 3 to 5%. Streaming just isn't where the big money is. So Bruno saw the writing on the wall. He figured out early that streaming for an artist is basically just marketing. It's a loss leader. The real game, the one with the real money, was somewhere else entirely, licensing his catalog for commercials, movies, you name it. And right around this time, something crazy started happening in the industry. It was like a gold rush for music catalogs. You had legends like Bob Dylan selling his entire life's work for a mind-blowing $300 million. Then Bruce Springsteen comes along and gets over $500 million for his catalog. It seemed like every big artist you could think of was cashing in their chips for one massive payday. So the obvious question is, why didn't Bruno sell? His catalog was easily worth $250 million. But he didn't. And the reason why is because he was playing a much, much longer game. He realized his catalog was worth more in his own hands than it was to any investor. And that right there brings us full circle, all the way back to that wild $50 million rumor. Because once you understand how Bruno Mars thinks about assets and power and leverage, that whole debt story starts to look a whole lot different. You know, some industry insiders said it best. They said, the gambling debt isn't a liability, it's a strategic relationship. For a guy like Bruno, a casino credit line isn't debt in the way you and I think about it. It's a tool. It's the glue holding two very powerful partners together. So, how does this work? It's actually a brilliant piece of business jujitsu. Let's break it down. 1. Mars makes MGM an insane amount of money. 2. MGM gives him a huge line of credit, the debt, which keeps him playing there and not at a rival casino. 3. He becomes so valuable to them that they could never afford to lose him. And 4, that's the final move. The debt becomes a permanent negotiating tool, a way to keep both sides at the table, constantly sweetening the deal. And this all connects right back to why we haven't gotten a new album. In his business model, a new album is a classic loss leader. It costs a fortune to make and promote, and the return from streaming is tiny. Why bother when the real profit is in your greatest hits and your permanent Vegas show? Okay, so this brings us to the final and maybe most fascinating part of this whole story. What's the cost of all this financial genius? What happens when a great artist becomes a perfectly optimized business asset? Think about these two different mindsets. The musician is all about creation, expression, taking the risk of failing to make something new and beautiful. But the asset manager, their job is to squeeze every last drop of value out of what already exists. It's about optimization, not creation. And right now, the music industry rewards the asset manager, not the musician. And that leads us to a pretty stark conclusion. In Las Vegas, playing the same beloved hits night after night, he's not really an artist anymore. He is the world's most talented, most expensive, and most reliable jukebox. Look, he has absolutely mastered the game, but the system he's perfected, it doesn't reward creativity. It rewards optimization. And when you get right down to it, optimization is pretty much the exact opposite of art. His financial mastery may have come at the cost of his artistic evolution. So, Bruno Mars didn't break the music industry. He just perfected its new rules. He turned his incredible talent into an even more incredible financial asset. But it leaves us with this one big lingering question. When music becomes just another asset